stopped nagging my husband. He now feels the weight I carried alone, and I'm not sure I want to change that. I have stopped nagging my husband, and from the bottom of my heart, I can't say I am so much happier. My husband has always accused me of overreacting, of getting too worked up, and of constantly nagging him. We would fight endlessly about how he didn't put enough effort into our relationship, and how he avoided his fair share of chores. It seemed like I was always reminding him to be romantic, to be affectionate, to pick up after himself. I'll admit it, I'm a very emotional person. That's just how I grew up, and I've always poured my feelings and emotions out with passion. When I'm upset, I make it perfectly clear why and how it can be fixed. Thanks, Mom, for teaching me that. Recently, something big happened. I found out I was pregnant for about 5 weeks, but I lost the baby. Being the deeply emotional person I am, I was devastated. I cried, I sulked, I sought comfort in my husband like anyone would, but there was absolutely nothing. This is how he's always been. He tells me, I'm not very emotional, and showing emotion is hard for me. I never blamed him for this. Maybe it's trauma, maybe it's his childhood, whatever it is. I'll admit, during this time, I was giving him a hard time and clinging to him even more. He doesn't like to cuddle or do anything mushy. He doesn't mind when I give affection, but he never reciprocates. Still, I never blame him for it. I just needed more love and support than usual, and coming from him, that's already little to none. I'm the nurturing, loving, supportive one in our relationship. That only really gets to me in situations like this, where I desperately need support, love, and comfort, but this time, I realized I'd get none from him. I cried through the whole night, lying awake, replaying every single moment where I've needed him, and he simply wasn't there for me. And then something inside me clicked, everything shifted. Why should I keep pouring out love and support when I don't get any in return? So, I stopped completely. I stopped showing love, offering support, being nurturing, even any physical intimacy. No more kissing, cuddling, nothing. I stopped telling him what needed to be done. I stopped begging for romance or reassurance. I stopped, as he puts it, nagging. As soon as I did this, the change was instant. Usually, when he's at work, I'd update him about our 1-year-old and call to check in. When he came home, I greet him with warmth and listen to his long rants about his hobbies. Not this time. I did nothing. I'd typically give him head rubs, back scratches at night, and tell him how handsome and adored he is, honestly, about 100 times a day. But no more. I stopped managing his work assignments, managing the house, telling him to pick up after himself, telling him to be more romantic or to reassure me. Nothing. It's been about a week, and my mental health has improved dramatically. I used to feel like I was managing 2 toddlers, now it feels like just one. Suddenly, I had so much free time. I didn't ask about his day, I didn't worry about him like I once did. I only picked up after my baby and myself. I wasn't overwhelmed by everything I used to keep track of. It's like a weight has been lifted, and I feel so free. But now, he's the one who's constantly asking me what's wrong, checking in with me, doing all the things I spent years begging him to do. He's suddenly more physically affectionate though. Now I'm the one rejecting him. He's asked me, several times, if I've fallen out of love with him. He's tried to apologize for how he's acted, admitting that he took me for granted. He's even tried, a little too late, to give me the support I was begging for just days ago. But let me tell you, I'm not rushing to forgive, nor am I eager to go back out of guilt. I have absolutely no intention of stopping what I'm doing. Honestly, I don't even know if I ever want to go back. I'm happier. I feel so light, like I can finally breathe. Maybe some might think it makes me a bad person, but I don't care. After all this time, he's finally feeling the weight I've carried alone for so long, and I'm not about to take that off his shoulders now. A deep conversation is definitely needed, as so many have suggested to me. Many people suggest couples therapy, but at this point, I refuse to be the one to initiate it. I'm done putting in all the effort for our relationship to work. If he wants it, it's up to him now. I'll have to see how the conversation goes, though I can predict it'll be shut down or glossed over, as always. Divorce is absolutely on my mind and something I want, but as a stay-at-home mom, it's a long and challenging road. Still, for the first time in a long while, I feel supported even if it comes from within myself. The day after everything came to a head, I sat down with my husband for a serious, uninterrupted one-on-one conversation. I didn't dance around it right from the start. I told him I wanted a divorce. Years of his absence, not just physically but emotionally, mentally, and every possible way, had finally caught up to me. I told him, plain and simple, that I was completely and utterly exhausted. I had no energy left to fight for our marriage. I was honestly expecting him to shrug me off, dismiss me, treat my words as something frivolous or fleeting. I was gearing myself up to move forward with ending things if he did. But his reaction completely threw me for a loop. Instead of shutting me down, he broke down in tears. I've only seen him cry a handful of times, usually when he's talked about his difficult childhood, but this was different. He took full responsibility for everything. He admitted that his lack of emotion, his lack of support, had deeply affected both me and our marriage. He said he wanted to change. Still, I looked him in the eyes and told him that even if he changed right now, I still wanted a divorce. I told him how strange and painful it was to know that he was always capable of this kind of emotional honesty, and yet it took everything in me shutting down, giving him the ice-cold treatment he's been dishing out for years, for him to finally see what he'd done. He told me that me giving him a taste of his own medicine was what finally woke him up. For the first time, he said, he really understood what it felt like to be in my position. That conversation lasted 2 hours. The next day, we talked more, but my mind was still made up. I couldn't get past the thought, why does someone need to experience exactly what they inflict before they can comprehend the pain they've caused? The day after that, he brought it up again. He told me he wanted us to go to couples counseling, that he'd enrolled in a 26-week course on compromise in marriage. But I've stayed firm this whole time. I keep stressing that I still want a divorce. That moment, that deep gut feeling, doesn't just disappear because of some promises or tears. I can't get over the fact that it took withholding myself entirely for him to realize what he'd lost. He pleaded with me, begged me to give him one last chance. He tried to convince me that this time, the change would be real and lasting. I told him, in no uncertain terms, that lasting change was the only thing that mattered, and it had to be built on something real, something solid. I told him I wasn't interested in a few good days before things slid right back to where they'd always been. I refuse to invest myself in this marriage again unless I see something different, something genuine, and unless a couples therapist can walk us through rebuilding from scratch. I've made it very clear to him, I will not be getting our relationship one drop more than I have received these last few years. I carry 100% of the emotional, physical, and mental load of our relationship, our family, and our household, and from now on, all that energy is going only into my baby. I've taken steps for myself, too. I've joined a support group, for wives, and it begins in mid-March. I've also signed up for a new parent support program, where a worker comes to our home and gives us parenting guidance. My husband is participating in that, too. It's been 4 days of constant emotion, tough conversations, and reflection. Divorce is still very much on the table for me. I want to see real change, not just empty promises and performative gestures. Above all, I want to be with someone who actually gives a damn when important things happen in my life. I'm not forgiving, and I'm definitely not forgetting right now. I'm just riding this wave, giving myself this last leg to stand on. If therapy doesn't work and he doesn't truly change, then my baby and I are gone. This has been an absolute monster roller coaster of emotions, and honestly, that's probably an understatement. Update 2. I didn't plan it this way, but we're basically doing an in-house separation. He moved himself to the guest room without me asking. He brought his pillow, his gaming console, his chargers, all of it. He said I needed space, and for once, he didn't argue about what space looked like. I told him my boundaries again: no touching, no pet names, no trying to slip back into our old rhythm. I want the kitchen clean, I want the baby cared for without being begged or reminded, I want my time respected. He nodded and wrote it all down in a notebook like he was taking notes in a class he can't afford to fail. The first night, our baby spiked a fever. I felt my whole body go on autopilot: the thermometer, the tepid washcloths, the counting down the minutes until I could dose again. I didn't say a word to him. I expected the usual disappearing act. But he came into the nursery quietly, measured the medicine himself, set an alarm on his phone for the next dose, and took the baby to the rocking chair. He whispered to our son, and I stood in the doorway, waiting for him to hand him back to me at the first sign of fuss. He didn't. He sat there, half asleep, 4 hours, humming a song I'd never heard him hum, and I went back to bed and slept 5 uninterrupted hours for the first time in a year. I woke up to clean bottles drying on the rack and a damp towel hanging neatly. He didn't expect it in a parade. He just did it. I said thank you and kept it moving. We had our first couples therapy session 2 days later. I told the therapist in the first 10 minutes that I still wanted a divorce. I didn't dance around it. I'm not here to pretend. He didn't interrupt me or roll his eyes. He told the therapist he'd enrolled in individual therapy with someone who specializes in emotional regulation. He said the word alexithymia like he'd rehearsed it in the car, and it hung in the air between us. The therapist asked me what I needed from this process. I said proof, not promises. I said consistency, not crescendos. I said I wasn't going to be emotionally available just because he was now practicing how to be. I told her I don't want to be the homework he needs to learn to show up even when I'm not feeding him a to-do list. When we got home, he handed me an envelope. I thought it was a note. It was. It was a draft of a postnuptial agreement. He'd paid an attorney to write it up. It spelled out, in actual legal language, that if we divorce, I keep the house until our child is in school, I receive spousal support for a set period while I get on my feet, and he will not contest primary custody. There were clauses about therapy compliance and financial transparency. He said, "You don't have to sign anything. You can have your own lawyer tear this apart. I just want you to know I'm not keeping you here because you depend on me." I stood there with the paper in my hands and my knees went weak. I didn't cry, but I felt something crack open in a way that wasn't pretty or poetic. The next morning, I found an attorney and booked a consult. I'm not signing anything until someone who works for me says it protects me. But it's on the table, and it's real. The new parent support worker came by that afternoon, and for once, he sat through the entire visit without walking off to talk about some hobby or scrolling his phone mid-sentence. He took notes about sleep regression and sensory play. He asked questions, actual questions, the kind that require you to care about the answer. When she left, he put our baby in the high chair and sliced strawberries into stars. It was such a small, stupid thing, but it's one of those tiny kindnesses I used to give him without blinking. I watched his hands shaking a little as he lined them up on the tray and I had to look away. I went to the bank and opened an account in my own name. I sent him the routing number and told him what I needed to start planning an exit if I decide to go. He transferred money without acting like it was a favor. I put in an application for part-time childcare, and I dug out my old resume from a dusty email folder. I changed the dates, added primary caregiver, and hit send on 2 applications for remote admin jobs that I'd always told myself I couldn't do because there was no time and no point. I walked out of the credit union and sat in my car and just breathed 4 or 5 whole minutes, and the air felt different in my lungs. He called his mother that night. He told me earlier in the day he planned to set boundaries with her. I didn't ask to listen. I walked past the guest room and overheard his voice break in a way I haven't heard since that first year we met. He talked about how he learned growing up that feelings were weakness, that nobody held him when things hurt, that he got ignored or mocked for crying. I kept walking. I didn't go in and put a hand on his shoulder. I'm not the one holding the map anymore. He came out after, eyes red, and didn't ask me to fix it. He washed the baby's pajamas and set them out on the dryer like a tiny flag. He asked if we could do something to honor the baby we lost. "If you don't want to, I understand," he said. "But I want to, even if it's just for me." He bought a lavender plant in a small ceramic pot and asked if I wanted to choose where it goes. We put it on the back steps, in the spot where the morning sun hits first. He didn't make a speech, neither did I. We stood there, shoulder to shoulder but still not touching, and we both went inside quietly. Later that night, I went back out alone with a cup of tea and touched the damp soil with my fingertips and whispered a name I hadn't let myself say out loud. I went to bed and slept dreamless. At our second therapy session, he brought a notebook and listed out everything he'd done since the first, and I stopped him right there and told him I don't want performance reports. I said I can see what's changing with my own eyes and I don't want to be sold on it. The therapist asked him what he'd do if I followed through with divorce anyway. He said, "Keep doing this. For my son, and for me." I watched his face while he said it. There was this quiet determination I've never seen on him before that didn't feel like a grand gesture. It felt like someone finally realized there's work to be done every single day, not just on crisis days. We've worked out a schedule that doesn't run through me. Bedtime is his. Morning bottle is his. Trash, dishes, laundry his. He set alarms for everything and taped them on the fridge. I didn't tell him where the batteries were or what cycle to use. Things have been falling where they fall. Some shrunk. The trash sat too long one night and the kitchen smelled sour. I didn't step in. He handled it. He missed one of his hobby nights to make up bedtime after a rough nap day. He didn't act like he deserved a trophy. I also found out I got an interview for one of the jobs. It's a video call. I told him and he didn't make it about childcare or ask if I was sure. He just said, "I'll have the baby out of the house. Do you want the table clear, or the bedroom?" The way he said it, logistical, supportive, not clingy, felt like someone slipping me a set of keys to a locked room I'd been kicking at 4 months. We're not fixed. I don't even know if we're repairing or just stripping the paint to see what's under it. The post-nup draft is on the counter with a pink sticky note on it from my lawyer with changes to make it safer for me. The lavender plant is on the back steps and it smells like mornings used to smell before everything got so heavy. He still sleeps in the guest room. I still flinch when he gets too close in the hallway. He still asks if I want him to hold my hand and I still say no. He stopped asking every hour. He's started showing up in ways that don't require me to answer questions I don't have answers to yet. Divorce is not off the table. It's just not the only thing on it anymore. I feel calm in a way I didn't know I could feel. I'm seeing action stack up like bricks, no confetti, no speeches. If they keep stacking, fine. If they don't, I know exactly where my shoes are and which door opens quietly when the baby is sleeping. For now, I'm planting things, literal and not, and watching to see what takes root. Update 3. The interview was at 10 a.m. And of course the power went out at 9:12 a.m. The whole house sighed and went silent. White noise machine, fridge, baby monitor, but the wind kept talking. I stared at the dead ring light and felt my throat go tight. He didn't ask me what to do. He picked up the car sheet, grabbed the diaper bag, mouthed library, and I nodded. 5 minutes later, he'd hauled the folding table from the garage into our bedroom, cleared the dresser, set my laptop on a stack of cookbooks for height, and tethered his phone to mine for a hotspot. He took the baby and left. The house was so still I could hear the ice clinking in the glass of water he'd set down by my mouse. My heart stopped trying to hammer through my ribs. I did the interview. I was calm, and the only noise in the background was the lavender plant scratching at the window in a little breeze. I said words like calendar management and systems and I don't need hand-holding, and felt like I was talking about a stranger and also meeting her for the first time. He texted me a photo from the children's section, the baby in a ridiculous knitted octopus hat someone clearly lent him, chewing on a board book like it owed him money. After, he didn't ask, "How'd I do?" He asked, "Table back in the garage or leave it here for the next round?" That question felt like an inhale I didn't know I'd been missing. The power came back mid-afternoon with a little hiccup. I took the baby on a walk and came back to find a stack of signed and notarized papers on the counter with my lawyer's pink sticky notes all initialed. He'd met a notary at the credit union on his lunch break and signed every revision my lawyer added without blinking. There was a home key on top labeled with my name in his old blocky handwriting from when we were 22, and everything felt like a sleepover that never ended. I picked it up and it was heavier than I remembered. He didn't stand there waiting. He was in the yard, kneeling in the mud, pressing a cracked glass mixing bowl over the lavender. The forecast said frost. He'd set a rock on top of it so it wouldn't blow away. His mother showed up on our front steps the next day with a casserole and the loaf she always wears that says she's arrived to audit the situation. I was in socks. He opened the door before I did. I stood where I could hear but not see. She started with our last name said like an accusation and then went straight into "I'm only trying to help, which always means I'm going to trample everything you've built." He kept his voice measured. "Mom, you need to call before you come by. We're not having drop-ins." She tried to wedge her foot in the door with a story about a neighbor's niece who stuck it out and how I'm too sensitive. He said, "You can leave the casserole on the porch if you want, but you don't get to talk about her like that in my house." The word might use to bother me. It didn't this time, probably because everything else he said after it was our. He didn't look to me to back him up, didn't invite me into the boxing ring. He handed the casserole back when she kept pushing. He closed the door, leaned his forehead on it for a second, and then locked it. He turned around and his face was blotchy, and he didn't narrate what he'd done like it was theater. He put the casserole on the porch, texted her a boundary in one sentence, and blocked her for 24 hours by request of his therapist. The house stayed blessedly, miraculously quiet. The pediatrician appointment was his, too. Vaccines. Needle day. He packed the diaper bag wrong, 2 hats, no socks, but he came home with a sleeping child, a rectangle of dinosaur stickers, and a clear Band-Aid I had to squint to find. He laid the after-visit instructions on the counter, circled the fever threshold with a pen, and didn't use one word like babysitting or helping out. I could feel my shoulders not creep up into my ears the way they used to when I heard his car in the driveway. It felt like a weather pattern breaking. I got the job. The email pinged during nap time, offer letter, part-time remote to start, ramping to full-time if desired. There was a number on it that didn't make me dizzy. I read it 3 times and then sent it to my lawyer like I was passing a note in class. When I told him, he didn't whoop or make me a hero cape out of a dish towel. He said, "Congratulations. What do you need from me to make this real?" I said I needed the deposit for the childcare slot that opened up, a quiet house for 3 mornings a week, and a printer that doesn't sound like a raccoon in the walls. He said okay and paid the deposit from an account I now have my own login for, ordered a new printer, and put an auto transfer on my bank. When it pinged the first time, I watched my name light up on my phone with money next to it that no one could take away from me, and my palms went cold and hot at the same time. He still sleeps in the guest room. I still don't let him touch me. He stopped narrating his growth like he's submitting a report card. When he messes up, he says I messed it up and then does whatever it is, not with a sigh but like it's a thing on the list that belongs to him. He missed the trash pickup once and the bin sulked at the curb for 2 extra days. We both had to smell it. He didn't apologize into the ground like a dog burying a bone. He put the bags in the trunk and drove them to the dump. Grief group met on Thursday night. I told him I was going, strapped my sandals on with the gold buckles, and felt 15 years older than the last time I wore shoes like that. He didn't ask who would be there or what time I'd be home. He said, "I'll have pajamas and milk ready when you get back." I sat in a circle of women who knew how to nod without trying to tie a bow on things, and I said the name I whispered to the lavender out loud to other people for the first time. When I came home, the house smelled like clean laundry and cinnamon. He was in the rocking chair with a library book on his knee, the baby asleep in a starfish of limbs. He pointed at the tea mug on the stove without getting up. I drank it while my toes thawed and my chest hurt in that good bad way that means there's blood moving back into somewhere it left for a while. At our third therapy session, the therapist asked me what it would take for me to move the needle at all. I told her I didn't have to answer that for anyone but myself. He nodded, and for once I believed it wasn't a performance of patience but actual patience. She asked him why he was still doing all this when there's a real chance I'm not staying. He said, because it was never supposed to be contingent on applause. I watched him crunch that word around his teeth like a wintergreen lifesaver and swallow it. There are still tiny landmines. I found a sweatshirt of his in the dryer and the smell of his deodorant punched me in the stomach. He reached for my shoulder yesterday when I tripped over a toy and I startled so hard I knocked my shin on the coffee table. He put his hands straight up like a traffic cop and said, "I see you," which is the language his therapist is teaching him, and I went into the bathroom, sat on the closed toilet seat, and saw myself in the mirror for a full minute without flinching. That felt like a miracle small enough to keep. He sold a limited edition collectible from one of his hobbies to cover the childcare co-pay without asking me to be impressed. It was gone from the shelf the next day, a dustless square where it used to sit bragging. He didn't explain it. I noticed it by accident when I went to grab the tape. When I asked, he said, it was time, the way people say it's time to change a light bulb. The new parent support worker came back and he led the conversation. He talked about overstimulation cues and our son's wail cry that means he's tired not hungry. He asked for a sensory bin recommendation and then actually made it, right there, pouring dry beans into a plastic tub on a towel and burying measuring cups like Traeger. The baby yelled at the texture at first and then plunged both arms, then up to the elbows and squealed until he hiccuped. I stood at the counter with my coffee, smelled the lavender baking in a square of cold sun, watched a man I used to think would only ever talk about himself kneel on the floor and make space, and did not move in to take over. The lavender survived the frost. In the morning, the bowl had fogged over inside, beads of water slipping down like tears on the wrong side of glass. He lifted it off and the plant looked a little sulky and then brave. I touched the stalk and it gave under my finger and straightened back up. He asked if we could get a little marker with a name on it, not a headstone, not a shrine, just a small piece of metal that lasts outside. I said yes. We haven't picked the font. That feels important, somehow, in a way I can't explain yet. The job starts Monday. He made a schedule and stuck it on the fridge, a grid that doesn't run through my brain like a highway anymore. He has mornings. I have a door I close. The guest room door closes at night. Sometimes I can't sleep and I stand in the kitchen, drinking water from the faucet, looking at the 3 closed doors, all of them holding. The house feels like something you can live in instead of a song you sing until your throat is raw. Divorce papers aren't filed. They could be. That knowledge sits with me like a second spine. I'm not lighter because someone else is carrying me. I'm lighter because I put a bunch of things down and I haven't picked them back up. He seems to have found his hands. I'm not reaching for them. He's using them anyway. For now, that's enough to keep me here, planting and working and watching. If it changes, I know where the keys are. I put them in the bowl by the front door, heavy and honest, humming against each other when I move them aside to find the one that's mine. Update 4. The first morning of the job, I closed the bedroom door and heard, on the other side, the soft thump of little hands, and his voice like a low tide. We're going to the park. Mama's working. He didn't drag it out, didn't try to make it cute for me. The new printer hummed like a well-behaved bee and not like a raccoon with a vendetta. I logged into a calendar called Operations and moved boxes around like I'd always had a mouse in my hand and time that belonged to me. At 9:14 a.m., my phone face down on the desk lit up with a picture of our son in a swing, hair flattened to his forehead with cold air, both hands doing the universal baby sign for more. There was no caption. There didn't need to be. By Wednesday, the schedule on the fridge had started to look like a pattern rather than a dare. He missed an alarm and I didn't come charging down the hall. He saw it, made the bottle in the quiet way he's been learning, and stuck a bright orange sticky note next to morning that just said backup. I almost smiled and then didn't, because I'm not handing out gold stars. He made dinner without asking what was for dinner. The kitchen smelled like garlic and a little bit of panic and then like spaghetti, full stop. He plated mine, set it by the door, and texted me left side like we were conducting a drop in a heist movie. Thursday arrived, like a test. At 3:07 a.m., my phone buzzed face up this time because I'd forgotten to flip it. We're okay. Fender bender. Call when free, his message read. 3 words my body read in the wrong order until my brain caught up. I could hear my team on the video call discussing a client rollout and also the blood in my ears. He sent a photo, the back bumper of our car kissed in with a shallow dent like a thumbprint, the baby in his seat, eyes wide and then bored. He sent the location and a second text that said, already called the police report in. Nobody hurt. Will replace seat. Do not worry Lou time. I stared at the last word and realized he'd typed it the way I say in the kitchen, looping time by naming it. I finished the call. My voice didn't shake. When I called him, he picked up on the second ring. His voice was level and a little stunned. He didn't even cry, he said. He thinks this is a very weird parking lot game. I told him to get the car seat checked. I already looked up the fire station on Main that does it, he said. I'm headed there now. He didn't ask me to show up. He didn't make it my. After work, I found him in the driveway sawing the straps of the old seat because the tech had told him they needed to be destroyed. He'd already installed a new one tight enough that the base didn't wiggle. He lifted it with 2 hands like it weighed as much as all the things he used to hand to me and call help. He set the destroyed pieces out on the curb like bones he decided we didn't need anymore. Friday, I signed the BOSNUP. My lawyer went line by line and I initialed with a pen that had someone else's logo on it and my name below in that small, reading classroom way. We made copies so many times the edges turned warm. He didn't hover outside or text "Are we good?" He was at the pediatrician rechecking that lingering fever that wasn't really lingering, just the body doing what bodies do after a vaccine. He sent me a photo of the dinosaur sticker on our son's kneecap and the words "clear lungs" with a little lung doodle that made me snort alone like I was sharing a punchline with a plant. On the way home, I stopped at the credit union and rented a safe deposit box. 2 keys. He was already on the account because he'd made sure he would be when we opened the child care fund. The woman behind the counter asked me to sign one of those pages that looks like something from a spy movie and then handed me something small and gold and heavy. I drove home with both keys in my pocket and my heartbeat tucked in underneath. We finally picked the font for the marker. He brought me 3 printouts from the office supply store like a weirdly tender menu, 1 serif, 1 slab, 1 sans. We sat on the steps where the boards are sun bleached and a little splintery and held the papers up to the lavender in the late afternoon. A breeze moved across the pot and shook the stems like someone nodding yes. We chose the smallest, plainest font, the one that doesn't try to make language fancy. He ordered it without asking me to second guess and it arrived in a cardboard sleeve that had been through rain. We stood there at dawn on Sunday, because morning matters for that spot. He pushed the little spike into the dirt and it stopped halfway, stubborn, and he didn't muscle it, he wiggled it side to side until it gave. We said the name. He said it like he was asking permission. I said it like the answer was already known. The baby pulled up on my leg and laughed at nothing. Then we went inside and made pancakes. He burned the first one and didn't swear. He flipped the second like he'd been practicing. He told me he'd booked a vasectomy consult. He said it at the table in the tone of the garbage goes out on Tuesday and not like a grenade, or a gift. I don't want you on hormones, he said. I don't want there to be any maybe accidentally between us while we're here. He didn't touch me. He didn't gesture. He just kept cutting the baby's pancake into squares that made neat little grids on the plate. I said okay. My chest did that strange loosening thing it does sometimes lately where it feels like I've been wearing a too small sweater and someone finally figured out you can cut the neck hole bigger. He put the appointment on the fridge schedule himself. A box. A name. Not mine to manage. He asked his boss for a schedule change and came home with a different look on his face than the one he used to wear after those conversations. I told him I can't do late night deploys for a while, he said. I said the words family schedule out loud without apologizing. He got Tuesdays for therapy, left an hour early on Wednesdays for the new parent visits, kept Fridays wide for bedtime without being begged. He didn't make me feel like someone had conspired to steal productivity out of America's gross domestic product. He just wrote it down and then lived it. We had our 4th couple session and I didn't move the goalposts. I still told her I wanted a divorce. I still didn't promise a future. He talked less. He didn't pour his journal out in front of us like confetti. When she asked him how he was handling the fender bender, he said, I noticed my impulse to call her and ask her to come save me. I breathed. I did the steps anyway. He looked at his own hands like they belonged to a person he didn't know he could be and then back up at the therapist. She nodded. I didn't feel like throwing anything. Progress, if that word even applies. My first paycheck hit. It was smaller than the ones I used to daydream about when we were 22 when I thought everything came in clean lines if you wanted it badly enough. It was also mine. I bought myself a chair that doesn't hiss and sink while I'm typing. The box came flat and mean looking and he didn't crack a joke about IKEA or ask if I wanted him to do it. He opened it, assembled it according to the instructions, and left the Allen wrench in the drawer with the batteries, which he'd already labeled batteries, as if the quieter part of my brain doesn't remember having to label everything. Myself to keep anybody here afloat. He slid the chair under the desk and went away. I sat down and didn't fall. There were still small detonations, just not the loud kind. The baby shoved an entire fistful of beans from the sensory bin into his mouth and chewed like an old man with a stogie. He didn't panic. He said, we don't eat the beans, took them out one by one, counted them out loud 1, 2, 3 and swapped them for blueberries. Later, I would swear I saw him rinse the beans as if beans of taste memory. I watched from the doorway and didn't take the beans away to make the moment tidy. He caught my eye, smiled with half his face, and went back to being on the floor. His mother sent a card, crowded with script, that said family means forgiveness on the front. He put it in the trash without opening it. He didn't narrate it, didn't look for my nod the way dogs look back over their shoulders when they are not sure if they can run yet. The trash went out on time. The house didn't smell like anything for once, in the best way. He told me after one of his individual sessions that he had cried in his car because the therapist said something simple: you weren't taught what to do with your body when feelings happen, and it was like a light went on in a room he hadn't known he was allowed to enter. He didn't ask me to talk him through it. He said, I'm going to take a loop around the block, and came back with his ears red from wind and his eyes not looking for mine like they were hungry for permission. The baby got sick again because that's what babies do, as if they are running the encyclopedia of minor illnesses. It was a Sunday at 4 a.m. and the cough had that hollow sound like someone knocking on the back door of his throat. I felt my body rise up ready to make the syrup and reset the humidifier and count minutes like rosary beads. He was already sitting in the nursery, phone light dimmed, reading the dosage card at a whisper. He didn't look up when I stood in the doorway. We're good, he said, and patted the rocker with one hand like he was reassuring the chair. The humidifier breathed its little dragon breath into the room. I went back to bed and dreamed about nothing. When I woke up, there were 2 teacups by the sink, one with a string of a bag curled over the lip like a cat tail. He'd left mine where I always leave it when I'm the one who was up. On Tuesday, he took our son to a dads and donuts thing at the community center that someone had stapled an on flyer up for. I expected him to hate everything about it: phone cameras and sticky sugar, guys who make fatherhood into a personality. He came back smelling like glaze and paper tablecloth and said, there was a dad who said babysitting, and 3 guys corrected him at once. He laughed like he'd been given a joke he didn't have to invent. He put the donut halves into a bag he'd labeled for later, and I watched him not hand me the bag for safekeeping. He didn't move back into our bed. He didn't ask. He changed the sheets on his own without leaving the fitted sheet like a wrung-out towel wrestle halfway around the corner. We brushed past each other once in the hallway and I didn't flinch so hard I bruised. I still felt the electric fence alive under my skin. He held up both hands, traffic cop, and said nothing this time. He's learned that I see you doesn't have to be spoken every time to make it true. He apologized, in advance, for something I might hear. I told my dad to stop calling me weak, he said. He hung up. He didn't give me the whole transcript. He didn't ask me to stitch the cut closed with words. He went and took the garbage out in the cold and came back rubbing his hands together like he was remembering he had them. Friday night, he stood at the sink washing bottles and I stood next to the bowl by the door where the keys live and rolled mine under my palm. They clinked against the edge with that heavy, honest sound that kept making me feel like I'm awake. It was quiet, but not that brittle quiet from before, like if anyone exhaled it would all shatter. It felt like the kind of quiet kitchens are supposed to hold: warm, wet, ordinary. Divorce papers are still in a folder with my name on it and now in a box with a key you can't duplicate without showing up and handing someone your face. The office door closes. The guest room door closes. The front door closes. All 3 open again when they're supposed to. The lavender's little plaque caught a beam of sun this morning and flashed like a signal and then settled back into matte. He was outside with a baby, both of them wearing hats they didn't start the day in, both of them crouched over ants organizing their own chaos. I looked at them through the glass for exactly 3 seconds and then I went back to my spreadsheet. I'm not making a movie out of this. I'm making a life. For now, that's mouse clicks and tea and the sound of tiny fists drumming on my door once and then being led away with a whisper. If it changes, I have keys. If it doesn't, I have a chair that doesn't sink, a plant with a nameplate, and a house that doesn't ask me to sing it awake every morning. That's not nothing. That's new.